Before we get into today's edition of Just the Truth, Mike Lindell sent me a note yesterday. He has a special for the 6-piece towel set, $25 when you use promo code Joey. Just go to mypillow.com, use promo code Joey. You'll get the $25 offer on the 6-piece towel set, and I promise you, these will be the most comfortable, the most absorbent towels that you own. mypillow.com, use promo code Joey. Get the 6-piece towel set for just $25. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio to lose weight for the last time. Visit myphdweightloss.com. Bad news for Vice President Kamala Harris in the latest New York Times Sienna College poll published on Sunday, indicating voters viewed the vice president as more radical than President Donald Trump, citing her as too liberal and too progressive. We have those results for you. Meanwhile, former President George W. Bush says he will not reveal whom he will vote for in the upcoming 2024 election, while former Vice President Dick Cheney says he'll support Kamala Harris. We have the latest on the presidential race with the much-awaited debate in just over 24 hours from now, including Senator Tom Cotton, who says Americans value a politician's record over who might endorse he or she. Former Republican South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley and CBS host Margaret Brennan clashed yesterday over Haley's support for former President Donald Trump, with the governor urging the focus to shift beyond personalities and focus on policy instead, she said. Kentucky police recovered an SUV and AR-15 rifle in the manhunt for a suspected gunman who, according to authorities, opened fire near Interstate 75 over the weekend, injuring several people and causing a car accident. We have the latest for you on that as well.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
More voters report that Vice President Kamala Harris is too liberal or too progressive on key policy issues, and they considered former President Donald Trump as too conservative, according to a New York Times poll. The New York Times Sienna College poll published Sunday found Trump with a narrow lead over Harris at 48% to Harris's 47%, obviously within the margin of error, signaling that her political boost from the DNC after replacing President Biden on the ticket might be dwindling, and looks like the honeymoon is over as the election comes down to the final stages. Among the data compiled in the poll, it found that nearly the majority of voters reported Trump is not too far to the left or right on key issues, while only around one-third of voters said that he is too conservative, according to the New York Times poll. On the other hand, nearly half of voters, at 44%, report that Harris is too liberal and too progressive, and 42% found that she is not too far either way. The New York Times reported that Trump's lead over Harris as a more centrist candidate is one of his overlooked advantages. The Times reported in their summary, quote, yes, he's outside of the political mainstream in many respects. He denied the result of the 2020 election. And yes, he does have conservative views on many issues like immigration. But he's also taken many positions that would have been likelier to be held by a Democrat than a Republican a decade ago, like opposition to cutting entitlements, support for a cooperative relationship with Russia, or opposition to free trade. It's a reputation he's careful to protect from saying he doesn't support Project 2025 to his cagey position on additional measures to restrict abortion. The poll also found that 11% of voters believe that Trump is not conservative enough, compared to 9% of voters who report that Harris is not liberal or progressive enough. The poll follows one released in late July when Biden dropped out of the race amid mounting concern over his mental acuity, his ability to serve another 4 years. He dropped out of the race and dropped out of sight, pretty much, hasn't he? Think about this. How much have we seen of Joe Biden since he left, since he gave his speech that Monday evening at the DNC and then went on vacation? It's like he has remained in vacation ever since. And by the way, and I don't have it in front of me, but at one day this week, I found an interesting article about Joe Biden's vacation and the number of days he's taken. He has been on vacation about half of his presidency. It's quite amazing. I'll share that with you one day later this week. This latest New York Times poll, again, released yesterday, found that 28% of voters feel that they need to know more about Harris to throw their support behind her, compared to 9% who said the same about Donald Trump. And it's real simple, because Donald Trump is out there holding rallies. He's talking to any reporter who asks, while Kamala Harris is running the old Joe Biden campaign of staying hidden from the press and refusing to answer questions. There was video of her over the weekend as she was boarding Air Force Two, walking up the steps. She has her earbuds in. I guess it's a good excuse to ignore the questions that were being shouted at her by the press. We're going to hopefully get some answers tomorrow night, though, as the big debate is just over 24 hours away. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a highlight of this week, I hope. I hope that Donald Trump is prepared. I hope that he practices some restraint. As several talking heads over the weekend said, just let her talk. Mr. President, sit back, let her talk, and she'll do all the work for you. Harris held her first sit-down interview, of course, with CNN's Dana Bash. She took her comfort dog with her, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, her running mate. It's like she couldn't do it by herself, so she had to take her running mate with her. As of yesterday, Harris has gone 49 days as the official Democrat nominee without holding an official press conference. 49 days and counting. I'm not so sure that she'll ever hold a press conference. Former President George W. Bush, meanwhile, says he will not reveal whom he will be voting for on November the 5th. The former president's office said when asked by NBC News whether he or former First Lady Laura Bush would endorse a candidate publicly, in a statement, they said President Bush retired from presidential politics years ago, so no, he will not be making that public. Now, this, of course, in response to Dick Cheney, who announced that he will go against his party's candidate and support Vice President Kamala Harris. Cheney said in a statement, in our nation's 248-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power after the voters had rejected him. He could never be trusted with power again. Shame on Dick Cheney. Let me tell you my first response to Dick Cheney. This is a father who is upset because Donald Trump would not support his daughter for re-election, and his daughter lost her congressional race. Now, she blames it on Trump, but the truth is she alienated her support among her congressional district. They're the ones who voted. Donald Trump did not cast a single vote in that race, in that congressional race. He doesn't live in the district, so he couldn't vote. Yes, he expressed his opinion of Liz Cheney, but he did not vote. They had to do it. And for Dick Cheney to blame Donald Trump for that, Trump responded, of course, saying that the former vice president is an irrelevant rhino. This was in a True Social post right after Cheney made the announcement. Speaking to reporters yesterday, Harris said that she was honored to have Cheney's endorsement, adding that it really enforces for them that we love our country and we have more in common than what separates us. The whole endorsement from Dick Cheney, of course, begs the question, just how important are endorsements? Senator Tom Cotton says that endorsements are not going to make or break the November election. He was asked this question by State of the Union host Dana Bash when she tried to push Senator Cotton to admit that Dick Cheney's endorsement was a blow to Trump. Senator Cotton didn't quite see it that way.
Well, it was a remarkable time in politics. You have Dick Cheney endorsing a Democrat, and you have a Kennedy endorsing a Republican. I think what it tells us is that there's a lot of ferment in American politics, but in the end, endorsements are not going to make the difference in this race. What's going to make the difference is their records. This is a very unusual presidential election. We have a former president running for office, first time in more than 100 years. People remember that when Donald Trump was in office, Prices were low, wages were high, we had peace and stability around the world. Kamala Harris, as vice president, has brought us record high inflation. We have a wide open southern border, and we have war everywhere you turn around the world. So I know that endorsements sometimes make news, but most Americans are making their decisions based on the records of these two candidates. People remember that we had good times with Donald Trump. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have brought us very bad times.
I hear you about endorsements. We don't really know the impact that they have all the time. RFK Jr. hasn't been in elected office. Dick Cheney was Vice President of the United States for 8 years. He was a senior member of the House. He was Chief of Staff to Gerald Ford. He worked tirelessly to advance Republican policies for a long time. You don't think his endorsement of a Democrat with that kind of pedigree is going to make a difference with swing voters?
I really don't.
Or never Trump voters who weren't sure about Harris?
Well, I mean, some of this is probably that Donald Trump beat his daughter in her last election by 39 points. I think most Americans are going to look at this race and compare the records they have. Again, it's a very unusual race. When you have a president who served in office, who brought good times to America, and you have Kamala Harris, a San Francisco liberal, who has brought to America exactly what you see in San Francisco as well.
Do you agree with Senator Cotton? I sure do. Endorsements mean nothing to me. Love to get your comments. Send me a quick text, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Emails welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. PhD Weight Loss wants you to know, yes, you can. You can get back to your ideal healthy weight. Yes, you can get back into sizes you thought you'd never see again. And yes, you can get rid of that harmful belly fat, all without becoming dependent on medication loaded with side effects. Hi, it's Joey Hudson here. PhD Weight Loss encourages and equips you to lose weight the healthy, natural way and keep it all for the rest of your life. Dr. Ashley Lucas, a licensed registered nutritionist, developed a solid plan that works. Trust me, I lost 30 pounds. You see, PhD Weight Loss removes the guesswork. They literally tell you exactly what to eat each day while you watch the pounds melt away. But they also teach you to think about food differently and to learn to anticipate and navigate situations that make you want to indulge. PhD coaches will teach you to believe finally that yes, you can do it. With no gimmicks or lifelong medications, finally lose the weight and keep it off. Yes, you can. Call today. PhD Weight Loss, 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com. Kentucky police have recovered an SUV and an AR-15 rifle in the manhunt for a suspected gunman who, according to authorities, opened fire near Interstate 75 over the weekend, injuring a number of people and causing a car accident. Here's a story. A small silver-colored SUV registered to a suspect, 32-year-old Joseph A. Couch, was recovered off a U.S. Forest Service road near I-75 where the shooting occurred on Saturday. The Laurel County Sheriff's Office said in a Facebook post that a rifle case was also recovered in the vehicle. Now, Sunday afternoon, sheriff's deputies recovered a rifle near I-75 and in the vicinity of the SUV recovered the prior evening. The discovery came amidst a manhunt launched after the shootings unfolded Saturday around 6 o'clock near exit 49 of I-75 in Kentucky. Now, the authorities at the time were asking people to stay in their homes, saying that this person was potentially armed and dangerous, and were asking people not to leave their homes. Basically, it was a lockdown as this manhunt got underway. Police initially responded to reports that a suspect was shooting at drivers from an overpass or possibly a wooded areas. Authorities later named Couch as a person of interest in the shooting. They were searching for Couch in a rugged area with dense tree lines, according to London Mayor Randall Weddle. Deputy Gilbert Sadio, a spokesperson for the sheriff's office, said that 5 people were shot. They were all in stable condition early yesterday morning, although some of the victims had some very serious injuries, including one person who was shot in the face. 2 other people were hurt in the vehicle accident, he said. The search was suspended Saturday due to darkness, though officials kept the scene contained overnight, the sheriff's office said, and resumed the search Sunday morning when it continues. The Laurel County Sheriff's Office has recovered the suspect's vehicle. Later Sunday, the sheriff's office released photos of the suspect's vehicle recovered off of I-75 and as of last night, this search was still underway. On our text line, some of these coming in over the weekend after Friday's show, Christy writes, speaking of devices such as Alexa in your home is really no different than today's smartphones. We have conversations and log on to Facebook, and ads about what we have discussed show up. We carry listening devices everywhere we go. Big Brother is everywhere. It is a bit unnerving, isn't it? When you have ads pop up online about things that maybe you've been talking about. I've had that happen before. Or if you have maybe typed for a key word, and then, of course, they peg your IP address, and then every time you sit down and check your email or go on Facebook, you have ads pop up for that particular product. They know a lot more about us than we would like for them to know, I assure you. Many of you responded to my question on, it was Friday's show. And, of course, last week it was big news when it was discovered that Amazon's Alexa devices, when you ask about supporting Donald Trump, it would tell you that it had no opinion and could not offer an opinion on a political candidate. Yet when you ask about Kamala Harris, it went into a rave review about her impressive credentials as a previous prosecutor, and went on and on. Senator Lindsey Graham and others called Amazon out, asking why this was the case. Amazon pretended that it was a mistake and said that they would get it corrected. And they did, pretty quickly. I tried it a couple times over the weekend, and it no longer gave you any information about Kamala Harris, too. Wonder how long that would have gone on, though, had someone not called them out. Pete says, got to disagree with you on the parents being held responsible for the shooting. The parents were aware of the online threat investigation from a year ago. The father was told to secure his firearms. The father bought a gun, so he did not take the warning seriously. This is in response to last week's shooting in Winder, Georgia. And I had sort of asked the question. The father was arrested last week. And my question was, should a mother and father be held accountable for a crime like this of one of their children? Many of you disagreed. I said basically that I did not think that the father should have been arrested. Many of you disagreed with me. Jeff says the father knew his son had a mental condition and still gave him a gun. So yes, he could have stopped it. The kid also made threats last year, so the father was well aware. Okay, Pete, Jeff, and many others. I heard you. Thank you. Ace writes, good morning, Joey. Hope you had a great weekend. Maybe Biden's boy will be pampered and sent to the same prison that Wesley Snipes went to. McCain Federal Correctional Institution is basically a boys' camp. Look, I can promise you that Hunter Biden will end up in a very country club-like place. He will not go to a regular prison. He probably deserves to, but he won't, if he gets any prison time at all. Fred writes, good morning, Joey. First and foremost, thank you for doing what you do for us, your listeners and supporters. I don't know if there is a fair compensation for someone who is forced to listen to the cackling and senseless dribble coming from Kamala Harris. You're a saint. Well, thank you, Fred. Fred says, I'm listening to your Friday podcast, and I'm leaning towards believing I'm starring in an episode of The Twilight Zone. From third-party liability criminal complaints to 11-year-old boys claiming to be girls so they can sleep with a girl to guilty pleas by the first son. No doubt a commutation of the sentence or a full pardon is coming. This cannot be reality, Fred writes. Hopefully I'll wake up and find the polls show 95% for Trump, 2.5% for Harris, and 2.5% for Mickey Mouse. That would make sense. Thank you, Fred. I appreciate your comments. Now, I responded to Fred and advised him that I felt like maybe he had insulted Mickey Mouse to think that Kamala Harris would beat Mickey Mouse, that they would be equal in the polling. Personally, I think Mickey Mouse probably surpasses the support of cackling Kamala Harris. Faye writes, Joey, just read an article from the man over at the Southern Baptist Convention. He is bad-mouthing Trump. Can he not see the difference between Trump over abortion and how the Dems want to slaughter a newborn baby? It might be good if this man got his facts straight before he starts judgment. Harris and Dems are evil to the core, and I thought one with so many degrees could figure this out, but apparently not. Faye, I'm not sure what you're referencing with the Southern Baptist Convention. Send me another text and let me know exactly what you're talking about there. I must have missed that article. Your comments are welcome as always. Simply text me at 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Emails are always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Whether you're replacing a broken appliance or maybe you're just upgrading, you're totally remodeling the kitchen, when it's time to get those new appliances, when you're ready for them, you don't want to have to wait weeks or even months to get started using them, right? Well, that's not the case when you shop with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse. With over 11,000 square feet and 1,500 appliances at any given time, you can buy today and use today quite often. I'm talking about shopping with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse in Pickens. It's worth the short drive over to Pickens. Jeff, Johnny, Kyle, the whole team over there, they'll take good care of you. They have an award-winning service department, expert installation, extended warranties, and at Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they treat you like family. You're more than just a credit card swipe to all the team over there. Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they're proud to offer Speed Queen, the only washer and dryers with manufacturer's warranties that cover parts and labor. You owe it to yourself, if you're looking for a new appliance, to head over to Pickens to Discounted Appliance Warehouse online at dawpickens.com, dawpickens.com. Of course, the much-anticipated debate tomorrow evening. Panelists on the Big Weekend Show on Fox News discuss the established rules of this ABC News presidential debate between President Donald Trump, Vice President Kamala Harris, of course. During the discussion, Joe Concha made a good point when he reminds everyone that the debate rules that Kamala Harris seems to still be whining about are the rules that Joe Biden negotiated back in early summer, yet the Harris campaign seems to be reluctant to go into tomorrow evening with these same rules. Here's the discussion.
Okay, Molly, we have the rules. This was a big topic of discussion over the last couple of weeks. Talk about the Harris campaign even pulling out of this debate if they weren't going to get what they wanted, but we're set to go. So your thoughts on where we're going to be on Tuesday?
Well, I do think Kamala Harris is somewhat disadvantaged by these rules. She wanted to, for instance, be interrupted so she could play a victim and say, excuse me, I'm speaking here. She did that all the time during her debate with Mike Pence. You also might remember from that 2020 debate, she consulted her notes constantly. And so these things I do think will be an increased challenge for her. I also, though, have to say, I think a lot of people enjoy when Donald Trump pushes back and has that ability. And so these muted microphones do take that away, and that might disappoint a lot of people.
We've come a long way from the Hillary Clinton-Trump debate where they were both walking around each other, right? Like sharks in a pool, kind of figuring out what they were going to say and all that kind of thing.
Look, I think, to building on Molly's point, I think the muted mics, along with the no live audience, is actually worse for Harris, because if you remember back in 2019, early on in those 2019 primary debates, she had a breakout because she broke the fourth wall, that line between audience and the on-stage set, and won them over because she started talking about prosecuting Donald Trump early on. She can't do that here. There's no audience to break through the fourth wall. So the muted mics and no audience, I think, go together in terms of a disadvantage to Harris.
So, Joe, no mic's muted, no audience. Is this going to be boring?
I don't think it'll be boring. I think 70 million people are going to tune in if you look at the past numbers. But I can't take this argument anymore that these are the ABC News debate rules and, Kamala Harris, she's handcuffed by this. These are the rules that the Biden-Harris campaign agreed to. And if I'm Donald Trump, I nail this over and over again. If you're going to fix all the problems in this country that your administration created, why haven't you done it already? You own this. I'm not the incumbent. You're the incumbent. That's what Donald Trump should hammer.
It's going to be quite interesting. And, of course, for those of you in the Carolinas and listen to 98.9 WORD, we'll be having a debate watch party at Willie Tacos on Lawrence Road in Greenville. Hope you'll come by if you're in the area and visit with us. ABC News reports that Trump and Harris will have 2 minutes to answer each question, followed by another 2 minutes for rebuttal, and an additional minute for a follow-up clarification or response. Neither contender will be allowed to bring pre-written notes on the stage, and that's going to really handicapped Kamala Harris not to be able to have any notes on the stage. Donald Trump thrives on that. So, yes, Kamala Harris probably has something to whine about there because she is terrified. She knows that he is much better suited, much more capable in a format like tomorrow night. There'll be no opening statements from either party, according to ABC, and closing statements from each will be limited to 120 seconds. 2 minutes. Wow. The debate will be held at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. Speaking of presidential politics, former Republican South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley and CBS host Margaret Brennan clashed yesterday over Haley's support for former President Donald Trump, with the governor urging the focus to shift beyond personalities and talk more about policy. Appearing on CBS Face the Nation, Haley defended her support for Trump over Vice President Kamala Harris as Ms. Brennan questioned her about Trump's recent promise to make IVF free if elected. Now, Haley pushed back against the host, explaining how Democrat policies would be more detrimental to the U.S. and detailing how she would address IVF. At one point, Brennan interrupted Haley, noting her decision was like grading on a curve, to which Haley fired back and asked how Americans would be better off with another 4 years under Harris. Here's the exchange.
You listen to some of the things. You said you don't like handouts, and you're concerned about sort of the fiscal conservatism here. Former President Trump pledged to mandate that the government and insurance companies pay for fertilization treatments or IVF treatments for women. Is that a policy you would support, that insurance companies or the federal government pay for that?
It's not a policy I support any more than it's a policy of Kamala Harris to remove private health insurance or Medicare for all. Look, at the end of the day...
But this is the head of the Republican Party. This is the Republican nominee.
I know, but Margaret, you also have to talk about the head of the Democrat Party. You know, don't just look at one and not look at the other. When you talk about Medicare for all, when you talk about removing private health insurance, you might as well be Canada. You might as well look at socialist health care. We never want to get to that point because you're not going to get IVF or anything else, cancer drugs or anything else when it comes to that. When you look at health care, we need to know, both of my children were products of fertility. We want that option to be available to everyone. But the way you do it is you don't mandate coverage. Instead, you go and you make sure that coverage is accessible and you make sure that you're doing everything you can to make it affordable.
You would still urge people who identify as Republican to support policies that you say are not conservative.
I don't agree with Trump 100% of the time. I don't have to like him or agree with him 100% of the time to know that life for Americans would be better under the policies where we have strong immigration, where we have law and order, where we have an economy where we can look at opportunities, where we've got national security that is strong. I don't need to sit there and like someone to decide those policies are better.
But it's grading on a curve.
It's not grading on a curve. I think it's how you look at it, because I would ask you, how are people going to be better going through the next 4 years like we have the last 4 years? Any American will tell you their life is not better. So our goal is, how do we make life better? Instead of making it about the personalities, can we not start saying, what do we all agree about on the policies? Because there's some serious policy concerns.
And for once, I agree with Nikki Haley. There are some real serious policy concerns. Getting back to the debate tomorrow evening, I just hope that Donald Trump will talk about policy. I hope he'll talk about the achievements during his 4-year administration and what we can expect to go back to with another 4 years of Donald Trump, and forget that Kamala Harris is even standing at the podium next to him. It's as simple for the GOP to win in November, in my mind. Talk about policy and get the personalities out of the discussion. Talk about how life was under Donald Trump and talk about how life is now under Kamala Harris, because she can't try to convince the American people that she had no part of where we are today. It's the Biden-Harris administration. She's been a big part of that. You can't have it both ways. So she has to run on her record. And this is a unique position to have a former president running again in non-consecutive terms. Kamala Harris has to defend her record along with Joe Biden. Now, meanwhile, speaking of Kamala Harris's record, boy, is she trying to change it. Is she trying to run from it? But, you know, the interesting thing is, people from her own party don't seem to care. They don't seem to have a problem with it. For example, independent Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders said on NBC News that Vice President Kamala Harris is not abandoning her progressive values that she campaigned on in 2020 and has been for decades of public service, but instead he says she's trying to be pragmatic to win in November. Basically, he said it's okay for her to change her position on these important issues. Since becoming the Democrat presidential nominee, Harris has faced backlash from Republicans and independents for flip-flopping on far-left policies like banning fracking, which she once advocated for. On Meet the Press, host Kristen Welker pressed Sanders on Harris's recent policy reversals, asking if he believes she's leaving her progressive ideals behind. Sanders noted that if Harris continues campaigning on issues like raising tax on billionaires and increasing the minimum wage from a starvation level, she could win big, he said. Here's the exchange.
Let me zoom out a little bit. You have described Vice President Kamala Harris as a progressive. She has previously supported Medicare for all. Now she does not. She's previously supported a ban on fracking. Now she does not. These, Senator, are ideas that you have campaigned on. Do you think that she is abandoning her progressive ideals?
No, I don't think she's abandoning her ideals. I think she's trying to be pragmatic and doing what she thinks is right in order to win the election. My own view is slightly different. I think that in America today, there are a lot of people, rural people, working class people, who no longer believe that the United States Congress and government represents their interests, too dominated by big money interests. So I think that there is something wrong personally when we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all of our people, despite spending twice as much per capita. That is why I support Medicare for all. She does not. She has another approach toward moving toward universal health care. But again, I think on issues like expanding Medicare, by expanding Social Security and lifting the cap on taxable income that the rich put in so we can raise Social Security benefits, the need to raise the minimum wage from a starvation, 7.25 minimum wage to a living wage. I think if you campaign on those issues, raising taxes on billionaires, you know what? She's going to win, and I think she could win big.
Well, let me just ask you then, big picture, do you still consider Vice President Kamala Harris to be progressive, Senator?
I do. Look, she is not where I am. But I think, for example, when she talks about making the child tax credit permanent, and, you know, we did that in the American Rescue Plan. We lowered childhood poverty by 40%. Kristen, we should not have, as the richest country on earth, one of the highest rates of childhood poverty in the world. When she talks about building 3 million units of affordable housing, that's a big deal because we have a major housing crisis in America.
Wow. So it's okay to change how you believe on certain key issues like this just to win. Text your comments and your emails are welcome. Joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, you know, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you could trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. A recent Pew Research poll found that about 7 in 10 Biden-Harris supporters, because at the time of the research, it was the Joe Biden-Kamala Harris campaign, found that supporters of Biden-Harris, 69% said that the Bible should have little or no influence at all on laws of the U.S. including 53% who said that it should have absolutely no influence. So basically, the Biden-Harris, and let's just say the Kamala Harris campaign, doesn't believe that the Bible should be involved in making decisions. And it's not surprising when you hear the Catholic League president, Bill Donahue, talk about how the Democrat Party is pushing away the religious vote with a lot of anti-Christian policies. In a recent interview, he said they're anti-Christian and it's driving people out. He said, the guys I'm talking to, it's not even so much abortion. It's just they feel that they don't speak their language anymore. The whole idea of letting men compete against women in sports abuses the bathrooms. They think that they've just gone off the deep end. And they have. Mr. Donahue spoke to Fox News Digital about the Trump campaign launching Catholics for Trump coalition, which aims to build a, quote, nation where the rights of every individual to practice their faith freely is protected. He said in a Trump campaign press release, Kamala Harris hates Catholics and everything we hold sacred. We can't pretend otherwise. Our institutions, families, culture, and belief in the sanctity of all human life are the antithesis of her vision for America. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and now RFK are the antidote to the ruling class that has destroyed our country. This is Brian Birch, president of conservative nonprofit Catholic Vote, said in a Trump campaign press release. Trump, over the weekend, wished the Virgin Mary a happy birthday. The Catholic Church recognizes the birthday of Jesus' mother on September the 8th, which falls 9 months after the solemnity of the Immaculate Conception, which is December 8th each year. President Biden, of course, is Catholic. He dropped out of the presidential race back in July, as we all know, after the horrific debate performance. Donahue said that Biden exiting the race likely won't affect the Catholic vote overall, beyond perhaps benefiting Harris due to voters not being as familiar with her policies. Of course, we know what Harris's policies are. We know that she is a champion for abortion rights. Harris voted against the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, which was legislation that would have penalized health care workers who fail to help care for babies born alive after a failed abortion. This was in 2020 when she served as a senator from California. Harris is an ardent supporter of abortion access overall and has made history alongside her future 2024 running mate when she visited a Minnesota Planned Parenthood earlier this year, in what was seen as the first time a sitting U.S. vice president has ever visited an abortion provider. And the list goes on. Back in the 2016 election cycle, Trump secured the majority of Catholic vote against former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Trump ended up with 52% to Clinton's 45%. Pew Research data shows that in 2020, 52% of all Catholic voters cast their ballot for Joe Biden, I'm sure believing that he was a true Catholic, and 47% for Trump. Donahue noted that there's a vast difference between how practicing Catholics vote versus baptized Catholics who no longer practice their faith, explaining that religious Catholics have almost nothing in common with secular Catholics. I wonder how which definition he would put Joe Biden in. I would have to say that Joe Biden really isn't a practicing Catholic, even though he goes to service quite frequently. How can a practicing Catholic support abortion rights as Joe Biden does? Mr. Donahue added that the same often is true for other religious groups like Jews versus cultural Jews, evangelical Protestant versus mainline Protestants. In addition to the Catholics for Trump coalition, the campaign launched the Believers for Trump coalition, which works with various religious communities to end the Biden-Harris administration's anti-faith agenda for good, according to its website. Trump campaign National Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the Democrat Party and the Harris-Biden administration have waged war on Christianity with their support for abortion up until birth, the Department of Justice targeting and imprisoning pro-life activists, and the FBI plotting to infiltrate Catholic masses to spy on attendees. Donahue added that the Catholic vote historically supports Democrats, or did support Democrats until the 1960s. And he kind of walked you through the history, talking about how everybody was a Democrat. It didn't shift until the late 60s, early 70s. He said certainly by the time 72 when McGovern was running against Nixon. People said, wait a minute, but then Catholics felt homeless because the Republicans never wanted the Catholics. The Republicans were always the party of abortion, he said. George McGovern ran against President Nixon, as we know, as a Democrat in 1972 and was billed as a candidate who supported amnesty, abortion, and acid just a year ahead of the Supreme Court's landmark Roe v. Wade decision. Now, fast forward to current time. GOP has become the pro-life party. The Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022 because of conservative justices that Donald Trump appointed to give a conservative majority. Donahue said since Dobbs, abortion has been more of a monkey on the back of Republicans. They've lost because some of the pro-life extremists in the Republican Party tried to go all or nothing, but that's a fool's proposition, he said. We always lose on that. You have to make exceptions. The proverbial exceptions that everybody accepts. He says, and later in the term, there's less tolerance for abortion. So you have to play off of that. So Trump was advised, I think correctly, to get the abortion issue off your back because it's a loser for Republicans, and just simply say, listen, the goal was to get rid of Roe v. Wade, so that's up to the states to decide what they want to do. Again, this is the president of the Catholic League talking. So again, back to the original question. What role does the Bible play in our government? Back to the Pew Research. Voters who support Biden-Harris versus voters who support Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have starkly different views of the role that religion should play in the U.S. government and politics. Across several measures, Trump supporters are more likely than Harris supporters to favor an expansive government role in support of religion. At the same time, larger shares of Trump supporters than Harris supporters also say religion, and particularly the Bible, should have influence on government policy. A large majority of voters, 71%, believe that religion should be kept separate from government policies. A majority of Trump supporters, 56%, say religion should be kept separate from government policy, while 43% say government policy should support religious values. By more than 6-1, 86%, Harris supporters say religion should be kept separate, totally separate from government. Harris supporters, Democrats, believe the Bible has no place in our government. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined our mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Just click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, find me on YouTube. Be sure and like, subscribe, follow me on my YouTube channel. Just search for Joey Hudson. Appreciate you spending a few minutes of your day with me. Be sure and forward this edition of Just the Truth to some friends. Just click on the share button. Send it to a few of your contacts, because if we're going to build our community and if we're going to win in November, we got to build an army of conservatives. The way we beat Joe Biden is through educating people, and no better way than encouraging them to listen to Just the Truth. Hey, keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Your emails always welcome as well. Joey@joeyhudson.com. Don't forget to take advantage of the MyPillow special, $25 for the My Towels 6-piece towel set when you use promo code Joey. Just go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. We're back again tomorrow. Hope you will be too. Remember, God's got this. He's still in control.